Well, welcome. We're talking with Tom Trento and Jerry Newcomb. We're talking about radical Islam, and welcome all of you as well. Tom, I'll start with you because you have been so intimately involved with the Rivka Berry case and been one of the people championing her cause nationwide, as you mentioned, with the appearance on Fox and Friends and tomorrow with CNN. I think there's a tendency maybe among even people who recognize the threat to look at her situation and say, well, that's unfortunate, but it's an isolated thing. Maybe she has kooky parents, maybe they're unusual. We need to understand that this is the tip of an iceberg that maybe people don't realize has shown up in this country.
Yeah, we're being drilled constantly by the mainstream media. In fact, at the press conference we had last Thursday in front of the courthouse, as Pamela Geller was making her statement, Phil Keating, the Fox correspondent who was on crutches, just interrupted her and said, that's not true.
I think the biggest problem at this point is that only one narrative is being put out by the media. There's absolute proof that she was a Christian, so the brainwashing and the cult status assigned to Christianity is really particularly disgusting. There's proof that she was abused. There's proof that she was threatened, physically threatened. We're not going to have that conversation.
There is no proof. Here's a reporter taking issue with someone making a statement. He was so caught up in the fact that he didn't believe what we were saying that he had to interject himself, the media. So yes, we're making the point that honor killings as a result of apostasy is an Islamic doctrine. It's not argued anywhere from an authoritative perspective. We've had a variety of cases, a dozen or so over the past 10 years, and it's going in the direction that there's going to be more. So we're saying that's it, we're taking a stand, no more.
And Jerry, tell us about a couple of those cases, because I know we didn't have the opportunity to include all of them in the program, but Rivka's fear is based on history, even here in the United States. Well,
that's true. I mean, for example, in Texas last year, there were two daughters that were killed by their father, who then fled to his native Egypt.
There were chilling final words from a 17-year-old girl who was bleeding to death with her sister in a taxi cab near Dallas today. Those words, "Oh my God, I'm dying." They are Amina and Sarah Saeed. They were both shot over and over and left to die outside Irving, Texas, in a hotel on New Year's Day. And now police are releasing tapes of the cell phone call they made to 911 as cops tried frantically to find them.
911, what is your emergency? What's going on, ma'am?
I'm dying, that's what's up. Oh my God.
Okay, let me transfer you. I'm gonna get fire department online, okay?
Well, police suspect the girl's father in the killing, the father who had apparently threatened one of the girls over her dating a non-Muslim boy.
And there was even a notorious case. Now, we didn't cover this in our documentary, but you were talking about this because you're from St. Louis, and maybe you could even tell that little story, though, about that girl where the father was killing her, and they captured that on tape, and you can hear her dialogue, and the father and the mother was even helping.
The tape begins with an argument, and Tina starts screaming. Her father says, "Keep still, Tina." Tina pleads, "Mother, please help me." Her mother responds, "Shut up." In fact, her mother was holding her down, Isa plunging a 9-inch kitchen knife into his daughter's chest. Tina continues screaming for several minutes, giving way finally to a quiet moan. Her father, exhausted, then utters these words, "Quiet, little one. Die, my daughter. Die." But Tina's own sisters would later say she was a bad daughter who deserved to die.
I only cry for my parents. She was very disobedient. This is a girl that she always had everything she needed and wanted. She had loving parents, caring and loving parents. She had anything she always wanted.
Let's talk about the media's role in this, because it seems that they've been cowed by CARE and some of the other organizations. Just the other day, I had gone to CNN.com, and I saw a headline there about a child bride who was trying to divorce her husband. She was 8 or 9 or something, some crazily young age, and he was elderly. And as soon as I saw the headline, I thought, Islam. Sure enough, I click on it. The story took place in Yemen. Interestingly, though, I read the entire story The word Islam was never mentioned in the CNN.com story. The word Sharia did appear in the story about 10 paragraphs or 15 paragraphs, 2/3 or 3/4 of the way into the story. That's just one example, but it seems like there's an unwillingness on the part of the media here to name the culprit in many of these things.
The sad case, the facts of the situation are that there is a cultural war taking place. There's a war, a clash of civilizations. On one side, you have conservative Jewish people joining together with conservative Christians. Very, very unique. There's been a lot of tension in that relationship historically. Well, now, and I'm all over the United States and different parts of the world, and I'm seeing Jews and Christians uniting in a supernatural sense, if you will, taking a stand on principle, recognizing that there's a disagreement over, Yeshua Mashiach, of course, over the Messiah, but saying, you know what, we'll argue about that a little bit. Right now, we're both going to get killed by this other guy. Let's go deal with that. That is over against a leftist democratic ideology, a democratist ideology infused with radical Islamist ideology. Those are the two groups. And the mainstream media have become, if you have 100 people that work for the mainstream media, 95 of them voted for Obama. They have become the marketing firm for this leftist ideology that's clashing with Jews and Christians. And this is their time to get their utopia built, and we stand in the way. People who stand on principle, believing that God exists. So that's the battle that's taking place. And I'll tell you what, it's a religious battle. You strip it all away, it really is.
And that's an issue here because, Jerry, you went to England to shoot parts of that program. And we didn't get to see all of the stuff that you did in England. What occurs there is what happens here down the road. And they're having that clash between radical Islam and sort of this squishy secularism, this political correctness now, and they're not winning the battle. Talk about what you found there and why they're short of the resources they need to combat the threat there.
Well, it's really an amazing thing, the degree to which Muslims have made advances in England. In a nation of 60 million people, about maybe 3 million are Muslims, and yet this is anecdotal, but just watching the television in the hotel room, you see lots of Muslim programming and so forth, and you don't see any Jewish preaching, but you don't see any Christian preaching. It's just amazing. And the recent head of the BBC now, of the religious programming for the BBC, is a Muslim. And the problem is getting in the area of free speech. For example, in a school, public school, the children were brought into an assembly, and this was run by Muslims in a public school, and the children all had to bow down and worship Allah in the school. And there were 2 Christian teenage girls that in good conscience could not participate in this, and so they ended up getting suspended. And so there are absolute clashes that are going on left and right over this, and it's the same type of marriage that you were talking about, where you have the secular humanists who don't believe in God, working together with the radical Muslims, and the ones squeezed in the middle are, decent conservative Christian people and Jews. And Israel, oh my goodness, Israel really is the canary in the coal mine. For example, in London and in other parts of Great Britain, in January, during the Gaza protests, there were some protests. You can even see this on YouTube, where you can see the police, the British police, running away from the radical Muslims as they are protesting.
Allahu Akbar! Allahu Akbar! Oh, shut your mouth! Allahu Akbar! That's right, God! Allahu Akbar!
And God help us when Israel hits Iran, which is inevitable, and that Arab Street erupts worldwide, and it will erupt in the United States, and the dividing line will be drawn within the next few months in the U.S. You either stand with Israel or you don't, and Obama's going to be right in the middle. It's going to be a frightful situation.